This is Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. It's my pleasure today to have a room full of gentlemen on the other end, which is a first for me. We are speaking today with Freedom USA. Freedom is a global distributor of electronic components and supply chain solutions based out of Florida. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. We have three gentlemen. I'll give you a brief introduction, then ask them each to introduce themselves individually. We have Mr. Carl DePaolo, the president, CEO, and one of the founders of Freedom. We have in the middle, then we have John Hartnett, who I believe is the director of quality. And then on the far left on our screen is John MaGee, who's the vice president of sales. Carl, let me begin with you. If you could provide an introduction to yourself and Freedom for us, please.
All right, well, my name is Carl DePaolo. I've been in the industry for about 35 years. I got into the industry when I was 20 years old. I've been in the industry ever since. I worked for various independent distributors in the past. I jumped ship from the last company I was working for with my brother-in-law, and we started Freedom Sales out of my dining room. And it's grown exponentially. What we are is a global distributor of electronic components. We don't really like to compare ourselves to other independents, so we don't throw that independent word in there, because we think we have it dialed into the point where we could actually compete with the franchise distributors as well. And that's what we're attempting to do, and it seems to be working very nicely. I brought John in because quality has been an issue for us not an issue, a concern for us since probably about 15, 20 years ago. We established a counterfeit mitigation program, and we've been elevating that program ever since. So we feel very comfortable when we're dealing with our customers that what we're going to supply them is exactly what they're ordering. We don't buy product unless we know exactly what we're ordering. So we're very conscious of where we fit in the supply chain, and we're very conscious of how we perform for our customers.
Okay, thank you. John, why don't we just go right down the road there, John Hartnett there. And
well, Eric, it's nice to meet you. I have been in the electronic distribution industry for 12 years. I have over 16 years of quality management experience, lead auditor certified for AS 9100, ISO 9001, and ISO 13485. Numerous successes under our belts. The additional experiences that I have are in the medical devices manufacturing industry. So that is a bit of a unique perspective that we bring. Overall, we aggressively pursue continuous improvement. We are here to meet and exceed customer requirements as well as all regulatory requirements.
good. Thank you. And John MaGee.
Good morning, Eric. So like Carl, about 30 years in the industry. Cut my teeth at one of the big global franchise distributors for almost 20 years. Did every position relating to sales, inside field sales, management, branch management, all that kind of stuff. And really, our core here at Freedom is distribution services, right? So again, forget what the label is. Distribution services, what are the things that customers need to make their life easier, to transact business, effectively, and really just, continue to be a good vendor and supplier.
Good. And actually, you bring up a good point there. So let's just go right off that here. The issue of the title, you said, call it what you want. There's the distributors, I guess, the franchise distributors, the independents, and then also kind of the brokers. Kind of, how do you distinguish between those three?
Yeah, I think it's, if I go really hardcore definition, brokers traditionally, they don't do any inventory management, right? It's really order in, order out, typically focused on just specific portions of the supply chain, shortage, obsolescence, those kind of things. So that's where I would put a broker, right? If you're a franchise distributor, the main thing is that you're contractually tied to the factories, right? So the independents kind of sit there in the middle, where we may still source and buy from the same places, but we don't have a contract that overrides our relationship, right? So for me, it comes back to what are the things that typical customers want and need, right? They need dedicated support, right? Somebody they can reach out to regularly, not just a call center. They may need some credit help, right? They may need some inventory support, hold some inventory, let me take releases and schedules throughout, 6 months, those kind of things. So
Mhm.
those are the things that I think the independents try to do, which are core services for the franchise distributors.
Mhm.
And really, in some cases, I think for Freedom, we're also focused on our sweet spot might be the middle of the market, right? We know we're not going to sell to Apple, right? They're not our target customer, but there's a large customer base out there that needs some love and attention, and it's really fertile ground for us because we're small enough to be agile, but large enough to have the resources that they crave and maybe can't get from the very large franchise distributors as well.
Mhm. And within that too, then, whereas a franchise distributor wouldn't necessarily buy back or from excess inventory from a contract manufacturer, somebody in your position would?
Potentially. I mean, one of the things I think that being independent allows us to do is it really brings a lot of flexibility to our model, right? A franchise contract is good in a lot of ways, but there's some hurdles there that you can't clear. Maybe it's one of those kind of things. So we deal with customers every day who are frustrated because they have inventory that either they didn't fully consume, or maybe say you're a contract manufacturer and you lost it to a competitor and you had a certain amount of inventory in your supply chain. They need avenues to try to relieve that burden, from an inventory liability, from a financial liability. And when you go back to your franchise partners and they say, sorry, can't give you an RMA, but I'll gladly sell you new parts, that doesn't really solve the issue. So for us, we're giving customers like that an opportunity, really in a marketplace. It's no different than, what you see Amazon doing in some cases, right? Where you can go put your wares out there and you can resell them to other people potentially, whether it be eBay, all those kind of things. So there's a little bit of that, right? You give an option out there, and if there's the hardcore supply and demand scenario, they have a part that they don't need anymore. We help connect them to somebody who does need that part. Really, it's three winners, all the way around there, right? Because Freedom obviously gets to transact that and do a little revenue off that scenario. So it's definitely something they don't want to do, but it's something that the market needs and craves on a regular basis.
Okay, well, thanks. Hey, Carl, let me come back to you. I mean, maybe help describe kind of who your customers are and the scope of your operations. I know you're based out of Florida, but you also operate kind of globally. Can you help?
We do operate globally. We have customers outside of the U.S. Primarily, most of our customers are in the USA, but we definitely do business globally. Most of our procuring is happening on a global level too. We buy from the United States, Asia, Europe, wherever the product is. As far as our customer base is concerned, I think John touched on it. We're not really chasing down the big $50, $60 billion contract manufacturers and giant OEMs. They have a lot of support. They have people in their building every day. They have vendors in-house. It's for us to fit in, it would be more of a gap buy situation. And we're really not interested in that kind of relationship unless it's something that might turn out to be regular business for us. For the most part, our sweet spot is OEMs and contract manufacturers in the 1 billion or less range, and that's our sweet spot. We can take care of those people in a way that they're not getting from franchise distribution, as John alluded to earlier. But we do offer options that they don't have from the franchise distributors. We are flexible. I can make decisions on the fly. One thing that separates us from even our larger competitors in the independent market is that you have access to people like John MaGee, you have access to John Hartnett, you have access to me, you have access to John McKay daily. So in the event that there's a deal that needs some massaging, like if you need to get a little creative, we can do that. We can do that on the fly. It's not like you have to wait till the CEO or the president or the vice president shows up from whatever meeting they're in outside the building. We have it live right there on the spot. We're on the floor. Each one of us is on the floor every day. We're in the mix. That's kind of how we fit in. We're very, very attentive to our customers. And something else that John was alluding to earlier, customer service is a big deal. When you're a $25 million contract manufacturer, you don't have Avnet or Arrow or Future in your building every day. You're not getting the kind of love. They focus on the big companies that are giving them all their revenue. right? So a company like ours can come in and treat them like they're one of the big customers over at Arrow or Abbott, right? We can give them the kind of attention, the kind of time, and do the things that they need us to do that they're not getting from the franchise distributor. So if they're in trouble and we have to get them out of trouble, like with excess inventory, or if it's something that, they need a longer term schedule, or, anything, we're capable of being flexible. So we kind of like to call ourselves a boutique distributor.
Mm-hmm.
Like John said, we're big enough to, to be able to work those big deals, and we have been, trust me. But we're also small enough where you get a lot of attention that you normally wouldn't get from a larger company.
Okay. So tell me, looking back over the last 18 months, obviously the whole industry, all industries have been challenged by the pandemic and what's been going on. What was the impact that the pandemic had on your business, and where do things stand in that regards today?
I got to tell you, I was shocked by the impact the pandemic did to our industry. For the independent market, I can't really speak for the franchises, but for the independent market, it has opened up all kinds of doors for us. The shortages has made it likely that we're going to get calls that we're not normally getting. We're getting calls from giant companies and mid-sized companies, and they're calling every day, and we're reaching out, and they have opportunities for us because everybody's looking for parts. The one thing that we've been able to do effectively and like crazy is execute. We are actually getting product. We have great sources. We are connected. We know where product is. If it's out there, we're going to find it. And if it's quality, we're going to buy it and we're going to supply it. Price is obviously an issue for everybody right now, but we're not getting any deals just like anybody else. So that kind of gets passed along to our customers. But at the end of the day, you need to keep those lines running. You need to keep your customers happy. And that's what we've been effectively doing. So it really hasn't been a deterrent for us. It's been an opportunity for growth. We're scrambling. I mean, we're eating up money like nobody else's business. And for a little while there, it was a little sketchy, but we figured it out and we got it done. And our growth rate is just phenomenal right now.
Okay.
Can I chime in there for a second, Eric?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things when we describe who our customer base is, they naturally were a little bit more affected to basically what Carl said before, that they don't get quite as much love from even the factories and some of the very large suppliers out there. So they're even more affected by the constraints of the pandemic because they already are a second, third, fourth tier customer for some of these companies. So they've really kind of doubled down on our relationship with us. And to Carl's point, we've been able to execute and support them and keep some very good regional, local customers, in product that they can manufacture and make their revenue goals. So it's been really impactful. It's been kind of fun, even though it's crazy, right? Because of there's a lot of additional activity for sure. And then it has brought us into the fold with some larger customers who have been referred back to us, maybe by their contract manufacturer, somebody that we've had a positive experience with. So we think we're also picking up some customers who wouldn't have traditionally been part of our customer mix. And now I think we have an opportunity to be a long-term supplier for them because, we've done some good work for them over the last 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's something I didn't mention. The market that we're in right now is the exact opposite of our business model. Our business model prior to the pandemic and prior to this giant shortage was we're looking for PPV cost savings opportunity. We're looking for long and short-term schedules. We'll bond inventory for customers, and price and quality is was the number one issue. And go back before the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, it's allocation, and we're struggling to try to get them to even look at our core business because they're so caught up in what needs to keep their lines running, which I understand, but it's a very interesting twist for us, and it's been good. I worry that sometime late in 2022 when this kind of fades off and the market corrects itself, that we're going to see a little retraction. But we're trying to put ourselves in a position to make sure that our customers, and including our new customers, the new market share that we gain, understand who we really are and how we can support them moving forward.
Okay, good. Hey, John Hartnett, I want to pull you into this because one of the concerns, obviously, with pandemic and with the challenges in the material supply chain has to do with counterfeit components getting into there. A lot being talked about that. As kind of the head of quality there, can you speak to kind of your processes, what you're seeing, how you're managing those?
Yeah, Yes, absolutely. I'm very happy you asked that question because as Carl was alluding to just now, that quality always remains at the highest priority. When we sell a part, our intention is to keep that sale, not to have any hiccup, not to have any concerns on the customer side. With this increase in allocation, we have adjusted our risk model to a certain extent. But with that being said, our counterfeit mitigation begins with our supplier base and how we manage this. Understanding suppliers' capabilities, are they able to meet all of our requirements, all of our flow down requirements, which are your requirements. Your requirements are also regulatory requirements. So we are ensuring that essentially the contract that we receive from you, when you get the okay from us, we have qualified the supplier. It's already someone, hopefully, in our system already. They've gone through the whole rigmarole of the qualification process. We feel a certain level of confidence, but yet in this heightened market, we still go through many more additional steps for this counterfeit mitigation. For example, obviously a big thing would be testing. Up to delidding, we are an AS6081 certified organization. So that means that we absolutely focus on our counterfeit internal processes of how we do our inspection and then how we manage our supplier base.
Okay. And I noticed on the website you are a partner with the ERAI. So how is that? How does that benefit your customers?
Okay. All right. So we utilize ERAI and other organizations, say like GuideDep, as part of our qualification process for our suppliers. That's one of the steps.
Actually, ERAI goes so far as to also alert you of part numbers or series of part numbers that may be suspect. So it's a good resource to have. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. No, and we're using that on the procurement side as well to understand what the counterfeit parts that are out there. Besides what sources, what are the actual parts? So this is part of our risk mitigation process when we're coming to you and saying, yes, okay, we can fulfill this purchase order.
Okay.
On the flip side, then, if by chance we are capturing a suspect counterfeit part, it is our responsibility to the industry to hold this part and to alert the industry, going through ERAI, GuideDep, etc., letting them know which supplier and the component that it was. Specific component. And we are holding these things. We do not want these parts to get back out into the marketplace. Right.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Also, just want to throw this in too, is we just had our AS 9120 certification audit at the beginning of August. And we had 0 non-conformances and 0 observations.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
That's on him.
Everybody does a fantastic job here.
Yeah. And a little bit on you, Carl, for hiring him, right? So
A little bit.
hey, let me ask, another issue that's in the industry catching a lot of attention is the idea of manufacturing transitioning back or transitioning generally kind of away from China because of concerns we're all aware of. Are you seeing that? What are you experiencing in that regards with your business?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have seen it even prior to the pandemic. Onshoring has been a little more prevalent. We definitely have seen Mexico be the recipient of some of that activity. A lot of what we're seeing too is that there's this consolidation in the next level of U.S. manufacturing. So companies who used to be maybe single site or maybe 1 or 2 sites, they've acquired 1 or 2 other partners over the years, right? Those companies are being very aggressive now to position themselves, but not only offshore, but also to stop business from leaving, the North American boundaries, right? So we just saw one that got announced yesterday, and with this announcement, the contract manufacturer, it's now is their second acquisition this year in the U.S., and they now have 7 manufacturing sites within the U.S. So their capacity's up. The type of work that they can take on is more diversified. So I think that's an element that's becoming more attractive where, maybe an older product is still being built in Taiwan, right? But now they're saying, well, I have options where I can build at a different level here in the US than I thought I could be, because maybe they didn't think that they could be with the very largest CMs and they had to go offshore, right? So we've seen a lot of that activity over the last 2 years. So there's a handful of really good footprint contract manufacturers in the US that through acquisition and merger have really positioned themselves to be players in that space. So it's pretty exciting stuff, it really is.
Yeah, no, it really is. And John Hartnett, I want to come back to you on something too. I think this would be for you. There's a lot of talk in the industry too about kind of regulations going to affect to promote what's called kind of the circular economy, right? And there are things that are requirements that come in place to prevent hazardous material from entering kind of the e-waste system and all that. And there are things like, I think out of the EU has a skip database requirement now with that. Does that fall on you? What are you seeing in that regard?
So yes, this does fall under the realm of quality. The way that we initially control this is once again going back to customer purchase order, ensuring during our contract review process and even prior to a quoting process, but certainly at contract review process, seeing what all of the actual requirements are on there. If there's a reach, if there's rows, whatever it may be, we certainly are addressing that and flowing that down to our supply chain. And then once product comes into our doors, we have all of this information on our purchase order, which reflects your purchase order. So we are then verifying that we are meeting all of the requirements of our purchase order at time of receiving through inspection. And then, whatever paperwork we may be able to obtain, certainly that will be on file.
Gotcha. Listen, I guess, I'm aware of the time here, but I guess I'd like to get a sense of your view of the industry moving forward. And I think, Carl, you kind of referred to later in 2022 as maybe when some of the current strains and challenges abate. But what do you see? How do you see this playing out?
It's really hard to speculate. I mean, we've seen so much increase in demand over the course of 2020 and 2021. It's hard to speculate what 2022 is going to look like. I mean, my gut feeling, and I think John might agree with me, I know McKay does, is that we're going to see more shortages like this moving forward. I think the cat's out of the bag, and the way manufacturing has been buying, and the way the franchises have been holding on to inventory, that we're going to see some of this kind of stuff moving forward. It might not necessarily be as dramatic as this one is, because this one's crazy, but I do see that that's going to be something that's going to be happening moving forward. We hadn't had anything like this in a long time, but if you go back to the early 90s, we had 3 or 4 or 5 shortages back to back to back to back. There was like a big 6-month or an 8-month or a year gap in between. I think that we're going to probably be heading in that direction moving forward, that we'll see more of this kind of stuff. I believe that the demand is still going to be pretty good. I think that the market itself is going to expand. I think small percentages, but it'll still be big enough for us to grab more market share. I think we'll stay busy. I think we'll capture a lot of and retain a lot of the customers that we picked up during the pandemic. So I really honestly, I feel like 2022 and 2023 are going to be opportunities to maintain the kind of growth that we had. Will we see the kind of growth we had in 2021? Probably not, but I think that we'll run into a couple of shortages along the way, and that'll pick up some of the slack.
That's interesting. Anything, McKay, anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, I would tell you that because this has been so unprecedented, where some of the shortages from the 2000s and the 90s were really driven by a supplier or a commodity. And this one has been driven, I mean, there's 40 brand names I could rattle off the top of my head that are all impacting the customer supply chain with delivery constraints. And it's everything from semiconductors to connectors, to passive products. So I think we'll see improvement for some of the worst ones, right, in the near future, because they've been really working hard in it for a year. But I think there's so many things that are impactful out there, and material shortages, the things that the pandemic has done on the back end to the supply chain, right? Air travel, container travel on the ocean, where, all of a sudden there's resin issues for connectors, which weren't an issue a year ago when the semiconductor suppliers started having problems. So I think we'll see a continued shortage of supply, but maybe some different names associated with that from the factories. I think the interesting thing for me is that lean manufacturing is being put to the test here, right? That was the wave, right? Cut down your inventory levels, push it up the supply chain, and now all the people that are lean manufacturing, have no inventory and they're struggling to meet their requirements. So I'm not against lean manufacturing. I just think that there probably is going to be another iteration of what's the
Hybrid.
what's the right way to manage your supply chain, and maybe, I think it's harder than ever to identify what are your high risk delivery components, right? Because it's so varied right now. So I think because of all those things and those iterations, and again, who our real customer base is that middle and down, I think our prospects are really good for the next 2 years, even as some of the larger market continues. But all the electric vehicles, for example, they're going to continue to put strain on the supply chain. They will get their product, right? And then the next tier down will get a little less, and the next tier down will get a little less, right? So those kind of applications, the fab capacity isn't going to keep up with that as fast as these new inventions are coming out. Effectively. So yeah, I think there's going to be challenges for the next 2 or 3 years, and it's just how severe they are and what commodities are affected by it. And will companies adopt a new strategy to maybe hold a little more inventory or partner with somebody like us to have us hold a little bit more inventory and be willing to partner in that risk of availability.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because the term I'm hearing bandied about more is that transition. It used to be just in time, now it's going to be just in case, right? Because when is it going to happen? It's inevitable that something will happen, and I think this has really forced people to reconsider those strategies and how they're going to be prepared. So
absolutely.
Yeah, good. Well, gentlemen, listen, I want to thank you for your time.
Eric,
This has been
one moment, please. I just want
Yes.
to also know internally how we are hedging what the industry is going to be looking like in regards to risk. Our assumption is that there's going to be a period of time we're going to continue to see less and less inventory out there. There is potential to be taking more risks. So we have to curtail this and figure out what our strategies are. We have our very solid strategies right now. They have been proven, but part of this is we continue to expand, let's say our test house relationships, get more and more intimate with each of them, become more and more of a partnership of understanding. Additionally, each one of our inspectors, we talked about ERAI, they have all gone through their inspection certification program, have been certified for counterfeit mitigation. And then additionally, with seeing what was ahead of us for this whole year, we've had very intense counterfeit training internally. I have the STD-10B training, as well as ERAIs, as well as numerous years of experience. So we have made a concerted effort internally that everyone gets a fresh round of this type of training. They're seeing the latest out there, and this is an ongoing training course.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point. You're right. I mean, everybody has to stay on top of their game moving forward here, considering the challenges and the uncertainty that's in the market around.
I mean, this market lends itself to the counterfeiters. To be honest with you, I mean, everybody's scrambling for parts, and these guys are scrambling to make parts that look just like parts that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so on our end, I mean, these guys are getting good. I mean, these guys are really getting good. I mean, they're even getting to the point where they can laser etch. I mean, it's just crazy. And our ability to mitigate that, our ability to weed that out is I think what's helped separate us from the average independent. We've got relationship with test labs. We take things to another level. We don't speculate. We make sure that we have all our I's dotted and our T's crossed. We don't speculate at all. If it's not coming directly from the source, we're going to get it tested, regardless. I mean, it doesn't matter how great the relationship with the supplier is. If it's not directly connected to the factory in some form or fashion, we're going to get it tested. And it's been really a great plan. I mean, we have absolutely no fear when we're shipping product out. We can ship out a $1,000 box. We can ship out $1 million box, and we have no fear.
Yeah, good. Well, listen, thank you. And Carl, I want to thank you for inviting the two Johns to join today. I can see why you did now, because it's given a broader kind of insight into the company and and a variety of different opinions, and that's very
But
valuable.
I think, you know, I mean, I have my way about things, but honestly, I surround myself, I've learned along, you know, after being a CEO for 21 years, I've learned a couple of things along the way, and I surround myself with experts, and these two are absolutely experts. I wish I had a chance to see John. He's also an expert. He probably would have carried the whole meeting by himself. Well, let's put it that way. He probably wouldn't have given us a chance to talk. But yeah, I mean, these guys do a fantastic job. They are absolutely experts in the industry. Anybody be lucky to have them. I'm glad to have them.
No, I appreciate that, and I can sense that. And hopefully maybe later in the year, we can get some more updates and talk to some of you gentlemen and get a pulse of what's happening out there, because you do have a very valuable perspective on the industry. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Carl, John, and John, thank you very much for your time. Stay safe out there and have a good weekend.
We'll do, man.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
all. Bye-bye.